welcome back to Vintage Disney here on Brian's Things That Are Cool. This month marks the 246th anniversary of our nation's birth. So this month's series of episodes will pay tribute to America. America is the most modern country in the world, and yet, judged by its films, no other country has shown such a fixation with its own past. Walt Disney once said, "I love the nostalgic myself. I hope we never lose some of the things of the past." Walt seemed to always have one foot in the past and one in the future. And he brought this to the children of America. For many kids, this was the first time they had any interaction with the heroes, folktales, and legends of their land. And what better teacher was there than Uncle Walt? He gave kids heroes to look up to, like Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, Francis Swamp Fox Marion, and many more. These were all men that very well could have been fictional characters. But they all existed, and these were their stories. Walt, as an adult, viewed himself as one who shaped the world of tomorrow by teaching the young minds of today. What seemed to be simple, wholesome entertainment was also teaching values and knowledge from a bygone era. The kids came for adventure and went away with much more. So put on those tri-cornered hats, let's fight those bloody British. This is Disney's The Swamp Fox. The birth of the Swamp Fox, which originally premiered October 23, 1959. Francis avoids being captured with the rest of the garrison when Charleston falls on May 12, 1780 because of his broken ankle, and has left the city to recuperate. Marion did indeed suffer a broken ankle. He fell when he jumped out of a window to escape a loyalist trap, thus avoiding the fall of Charleston. Fellow South Carolina militia leader Peter Horry wrote of the event, "When the story got about in Charleston, most people said he was a fool for his pains. But the event soon proved that Marion was in the right, and that there's no policy like sticking to a man's duty." The first episode ends with Marion receiving his famed nickname. In November 1780, Marion successfully outran Colonel Banastre Tarleton by traveling along swamp paths. After chasing Marion's men for 26 miles through the swamps, Tarleton was heard to remark, "As for this damned old swamp fox, the devil himself couldn't catch him." And the name the Swamp Fox stuck. Walt Disney himself had reservations about the project. Walt once told Bill Davidson of TV Guide, "I gave ABC their first full-hour Western series with my Davy Crockett shows, and soon the network was flooded with other Westerns. They made so much money for ABC that before long I found myself in a straitjacket. I no longer had the freedom of action I enjoyed in those first 3 years. They kept insisting that I do more and more Westerns, and my show became loaded with Elfego Baca, the Swamp Fox, John Slaughter, and Daniel Boone." Chafing at the prospect of continually repeating himself, Walt eventually took his Disneyland TV show from ABC to NBC. With the new network came a new name, Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color, and a new set of programming. Episode 2, Brother Against Brother, from October 30th, 1959. The Redcoats have retaliated against Marion's raids by burning down their homes. While Marion tells his men to wait before striking back, his brother Gabriel, played by Dick Foran, is in no mood to wait. Gabriel has vowed vengeance, in particular against the pro-Tory Vengeance family, the family of Marion's girlfriend, Mary Vengeance, played by Joy Page. What Gabriel and the Redcoats don't know is that Mary is secretly working for Marion and his men. Marion detested any acts of cruelty, especially that of house burning. When word of fellow patriot Captain Maurice Murphy's mistreatment of the Tories reached Marion in October of 1780, he condemned the actions in his report to General Gates. "I am sorry to acquaint you that Captain Murphy's party have burnt a great number of houses on Little Petey, and I intend to go in that abominable work. There is not one house burnt by my orders or by any of my people. It is what I detest to destroy poor women and children." Episode 3, Tory Vengeance, from January 1st, 1960. Young Gabe, Marion's nephew, played by Spin and Marty's Tim Considine, returns home, now a lieutenant in the Continental Army. He's captured by Tory Colonel Towns, who has him whipped. Gabe refuses to reveal the location of Swamp Fox's hideout, even when facing a firing squad. Historically, young Gabe was killed scouting a Tory party camping at the Pens, the plantation of Colonel Alston, a patriot. Marion sent Captain Melton and his horsemen to surprise them. As they stumbled onto the Tories, both sides fired. The Tories captured young Gabe, much like the TV series shows, and began clubbing him. Gabe noticed the face of a man he had seen at his uncle's home and asked for mercy. At the mention of the name Marion, the British yelled, "He is one of the breed of that damned old rebel." They pushed a musket against his chest and fired a load of buckshot through his heart. Episode 4, Day of Reckoning, from January 8, 1960. Francis leads his men in a vigilant mob against murderer Amos Briggs, young Gabe's killer in the series. Finally, though, Francis stops the raids because his men are sick. He wants to help them, but the British have control of the medicine for them. Francis must again enlist Mary to help the men before they die. Francis Marion, as the series shows, felt as if he had lost a son when young Gabe died. He even withdrew from his men for a time. Finally, he brought his men together and said, "As to my nephew, I believe he was cruelly murdered. But living virtually as he did, and then dying fighting for the rights of men, he is no doubt happy. And this is my comfort." This episode shows Marion seeking revenge. The real Marion was against any type of revenge. In reality, Marion's men did catch the real killer of young Gabe, and they shot him dead. He was a mixed man who was also a Tory by the name of Sweat. Marion was enraged. Peter Horry would later say, "Of all the men who ever drew a sword, Marion was one of the most humane. He not only prevented cruelty in his own presence, but strictly forbade it in his absence." Episode 5, Redcoat Strategy, from January 15, 1960. Francis Marion has succeeded in capturing British officer Colonel Towns, played by Henry Daniell. Colonel Towns is a fictional character, as there is no mention of a British officer by that name in the story of Francis Marion. Marion's nemesis, Colonel Tarleton, has at the same time taken over the home of Marion's brother, Gabriel. Marion's brother, Gabriel, was the father of young Gabe. Gabriel was a family name for Francis Marion, as his father was named Gabriel as well. He was the son of French Huguenots. Marion prepares to escort Town and his wife to Continental headquarters. Tarleton, using redcoats disguised as American patriots, sets a trap for the Swamp Fox. Meanwhile, Mary's father is recruited by General Cornwallis. Episode 6, A Case of Treason, from January 22, 1960. Marion has again foiled the plans of Colonel Tarleton. After escaping from Marion's men, Tarleton takes refuge in the home of Mary Vidot, whom he believes is a pro-British Tory. When Tarleton sees Mary and the Swamp Fox kissing, he puts two and two together and captures them both. Marion's men must put a daring rescue plan into effect to save their leader and his fiancée. Mary Vidot is given a much larger role in this production, but that's not to say that she wasn't important. In reality, Francis had known Mary since she was a small child. In fact, they were first cousins. Marion showed little interest in a relationship until after his retirement, when his nephew Theodore hinted that it was time for his uncle to find a wife. Francis Marion married Mary Vidot on April 20th, 1786. Mary, much like Martha Washington, was very wealthy and placed her fortune at the disposal of her husband. They had a lot in common, traveled, and ran a plantation. They never had children. A Case of Treason is partly filmed on the Disney Studios backlot on the Zorro set. Here, the military garrison of Los Angeles, from Zorro, becomes a jail in South Carolina. Other cost-saving measures includes a lot of stock footage from Disney's Johnny Tremaine. Westerns were in such a high demand, these cost-cutting measures were a necessity. Episode 7, A Woman's Courage, from January 8, 1961. Marion rescues Mary Vidot from Colonel Tarleton. In their efforts to escape the British-held port of Charleston, Marion and his men must first find a boat. Mary comes up with a plan in which she will convince the captain of a British prison ship that she is a loyalist and that she hopes to throw Marion's men in irons. Mary ends up in trouble, and she, along with some fellow patriots, must figure out how to escape before it's too late. This episode is based on fact. After being held as a rebel spy on a British prison ship, Mary planned and executed an escape with several other patriots. In 1974, the Daughters of the American Revolution commissioned a pewter medallion issued by the Franklin Mint commemorating this heroic rescue. Also in this episode, Marion is followed by British dragoons. Marion throws them off by making tracks everywhere he can, and then leads his horse through a woman's house to escape British soldiers. A British dragoon comes to the woman's house to ask about the whereabouts of Francis Marion. While there, he forces the woman's young son to shine his boots. As he leaves, we find out that the boy is future President Andrew Jackson. This too is based loosely on fact. Andrew Jackson was slashed on his head and hand by a redcoat sword after refusing to clean a British officer's muddy boots. Jackson held a deep hatred for the British for the rest of his life. When the British were planning to arm the Red Sticks and other Creek Indians who refused to accept Jackson's treaty, Jackson wrote to his wife, "I owe to Britain a debt of retaliatory vengeance." And our final episode, Horses for Green, from January 15th, 1961. With the help of the prisoners Mary Vidot freed, General Marion plans to steal horses from the British for his own army. Marion's men are told to stay put, but they disobey the orders and proceed to a tavern for a good time. There is at least one historical account that matches the events in this episode. A group of Marion's men under command of Peter Horry stopped at a tavern owned by a well-known Tory on their way to gather military information on British Colonel Samuel Tynes. While Horry interrogated the frightened loyalist, his rather unfazed wife motioned for one of Marion's soldiers to follow her to the storehouse. She then had every one of Marion's soldiers help themselves to a barrel of apple brandy, which they passed around and filled their canteens. As they rode from the tavern, Horry asked them what they were drinking, to which they answered, "Water, sir, water." He was forced to retreat. Later, Horry was forced to tell Marion about his decision to retreat. "But I might as well have talked to a troop of drunken yahoos, for some of them grinned in my face like monkeys. Others looked stupid as asses, while the greater part chattered like magpies. To have led men in such condition into action would have been murder." Marion laughed and said, "Well, you did right to retreat, but pray keep a careful eye on the apple water next time." The upside was that all of that drunken whooping and hollering of Horry's men terrified the Loyalists in their path along the Black River. Disney portrays the campaigns of General Francis Marion as a movie would show a composite character. The events aren't depicted 100% exact, but they do give you a general idea of the reality. Much of the series was shot in familiar settings to Disney fans. Many of the action sequences in The Swamp Fox were shot at the Golden Oak Ranch in Newhall, California. The Golden Oak Ranch, which featured 2 backlots constructed by Disney and ABC Studios, is better known as the Triple R Ranch in Disney's The Adventures of Spin and Marty. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my look at the Swamp Fox. If you want to be kept up to date as to when I release a new video, go ahead, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to be notified, hit that bell as well. I'm Brian, and I'll see you next time. Swamp Fox.